Yep. Okay, well, I'm Jordan Riley Swan, author of a couple of books that you may or may not have read. I'm on the YouTube channel today with a YouTube educator. Is that something we could call
I like
you?
that. Yeah.
Yeah, a YouTube educator who has a channel called the Quotidian Writer, which concentrates on learning the art of authorship. So, hello, Diane. How are you this fine whatever day and whatever time that people are currently watching this?
Yeah, no, I'm great. I'm doing good.
You're doing
Doing
good. All right.
doing doing well is what I should say. But
Oh, is that the grammatically correct way?
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah,
Okay. Well, luckily this interview is not about your editorial. We've done that already. You
yeah,
can be freebasing, freewheeling, free
yeah.
something or other, because this is all about YouTube
Um,
and your YouTube channel, Quotidian Writer. So my first question is this, and it's well, for once not about me. How do you do your research
I do it.
for
Oh yeah,
yeah, how do you do
my
your research
videos.
for the channel, for the videos?
Yeah, yeah. I think like my research process is a little insane. No, it's mostly I brain dump all the ideas I have about a certain topic. Like I'm working on one about second person POV right now. So any
And
books
that's the you,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah, okay.
Exactly. So I'm working on a video about that. So I just brain dumped all my ideas, all the thoughts I had, any books I'd ever read in second person before. And so I just started stitching that together. And then I was like, now I need to do some more outside research. So I read just a bunch of videos on it, read a bunch of articles, watched a bunch of videos, look for books or any sources about second person. And then I look for, a whole list of books that are written in second person, and then I make like a reading list for myself. I'm like, okay, here's the other books I want to read. So I have a good handle on the subject. And then if I want to include them for textual examples. And then, yeah, so my research process can be kind of intense because I do like to be as comprehensive as possible. So I try to read every popular source about this subject and see, like, am I saying something new? Am I covering everything that I want to cover? And that all these sort of nuances of this idea. So it's basically just me like amalgamating everything that exists about this topic that I can find, and trying to produce something like a cohesive argument or overview about it. So
Well, that's a crazy amount of stuff you're doing for a video, and these, what, are about 20-25 minutes long?
yeah, the longer ones. I do try to make shorter ones, but to varying degrees of success.
Varying degrees. Well, so how long does all that take with all that research and all that
I don't
craziness?
I don't time it because I don't want to know. Like I legitimately don't want to know how long it takes me to produce these videos. So I mean, I see it more as like it's personal edification too. Like I'm learning as I go, and it's helping me really understand that subject. So the teaching part of it is coming from me learning about it. So
Okay, all right. What was your favorite topic you've covered on YouTube to date?
I think I'm very attached to my writing with emotional honesty video, just because I felt like it's a topic that not many people cover, and so that's what I really like about that one. And it put together a lot of different thoughts and ideas I'd come across and just various different sources. And I was like, oh, I could just totally put these all together, like all these different examples. Like one of my friends had told me about hot making, which is when you're in theater, when your face becomes hot, and that's how you know that you're writing or you're acting with like emotion. And because you're digging deep and you're making yourself like feel
Hmm.
like worked up by this topic. So I just really love that idea. And I was like, oh, I could put this in that video. And then I thought of all the books like The Bell Jar, that I'm like that. I feel a very big emotional connection to Sylvia Plath. Like I've read some of her journal snippets, and I've read that novel, and I can see how much of herself she puts in there. So I'm very proud of that video because it's just something where I could stitch together all these like random ideas in my head and just create something that on a topic that not many other videos have done. So
Okay. Well, what's the hardest video that you had to turn into? What was the hardest subject you had to turn into a video?
I think I think there's something about when a topic is more abstract, I have trouble finding visuals for it or thinking of it that
Hmm.
way. And so when I was making my third person video, I had a little bit of trouble. Like, how do I represent third person omniscient versus third person limited? Like, how do I visually represent that on the screen, right? And I ended
Right.
up going with like a hot air balloon, like either you're inside the hot air balloon, that's your limited perspective, or you're watching a hot air balloon that's omniscient, you're seeing it in the distance. So I try to do that, but I thought like that video was challenging on the visual level, but then also because third person in particular is so nuanced, has so many different layers. It's very hard to be like, oh, this book is clearly from this type of third person. This is this type of third person. Like there's not that clear of a marker. It's not always that defined. So I found it a difficult topic to really tackle in its entirety, and I still feel like, oh, there's a million little nuances I could address, but you know, there's only so much time in a video or how long I think it should be. I don't like going any longer than 25 minutes. So
Yeah, yeah. The attention span of most people, yeah, it's going to tap out in about a half hour. Speaking of those pictures, where do you get the pictures that you're using for the channel?
I
Is
get
there a
them.
website or is there a?
Yeah, there's Pixabay, and then I use Pexels more, Pexels. So I use that one a lot more now, and they have a lot of B-roll and pictures that are like really high quality, and they're free for commercial use. So right now I'm using just entirely free images. I think at some point I'm probably going to have to get like to pay for stock footage, because I've definitely run out of writing and reading like videos. Like I'm gonna have to start. I don't like reusing anything either, so I
Yeah.
always try to use unique images whenever possible.
You talked about doing a lot of reading of not just sources of education within the book genre, but the actual books themselves. Like when you talk about your second person perspective, how many books do you think you have to munch through before you can have a good meal to serve for the YouTube?
I gotta think, because like I really try in my when I choose like textual examples. If it's a long video, I'll have like 5 books maybe that it's specifically from. But in order to feel like I'm really not an expert on a topic, like I don't think I could really become an expert unless I like wrote a book on that topic. But to really feel like I know it, I feel like I want to have at least 10 books from that specific genre. Like with second person, I'm like, I think my list is like 10, but I've read like 10 books that are in second person. But it's like I really want to have that broad perspective. Like my young adult fantasy series, I've read so much young adult fantasy, so I already had a big basis for that. I'd read, dozens of young adult fantasy. I read a few more because I'm like, oh, I should read some more recent stuff. Would this be a good example? Would this be a good one? Because like I really don't like to talk about a book unless I've actually read it for the most part. So
Have you have you ever been copyright struck?
I
Have you
have,
ever
yeah.
gotten? Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between a copyright claim and a copyright strike. So I've never gotten a strike, thankfully, because a strike is when they're trying to take down your video, basically. And if you get 3 strikes, you're out very much. Like your YouTube channel is like going to sink
Mm.
into nothingness. But with a copyright claim, it just means that you can't monetize it. And so I only started monetizing a few months ago. And so that resulted in copyright claims. Because every time I have like a Harry Potter movie clip or audiobook, it automatically flags it. So and certain other audiobook companies also do that, because I really like using audiobook clips. And I don't care that much if I can monetize or not. So it's not a big deal to me. I just want a cool video. Like I don't care if I can monetize it. So I will use all the copyright content I want, as long as it kind of vaguely falls under that fair use of, it's educational. I'm talking, I'm reviewing it and critiquing it.
Now, speaking of monetizing, I know why you chose to eventually monetize, because when we first started talking, you were definitely, it was all about just getting the education out there and you weren't monetizing. But something recently happened that you're like, well, now I have to monetize. Would you like to share with that, or is that something we have to kind of
Yeah.
avoid for YouTube?
No, they can hear it.
Oh, good Lord.
They can listen, but it's because YouTube basically they put out an announcement that they can put any ads they want in your video, regardless of if you monetize or not. So I'm like, I guess I might as well monetize, right? And I have some control over where the ad is. Like I can say if I want it like at the front or the end or a mid-roll, is it skippable or non-skippable? So I have control over that, although I don't know if they add in other ads anyway. Like they might put in mid-roll ads even though I'm not monetizing for them. Because I did get comments about, like one time somebody was like, this was a year ago, long before I had ever monetized, and they said like, oh, the mid-roll ad is so much louder than your voice. And I was like, ads, why do I have ads in my video? So I think YouTube only announced that because they got in legal trouble and they had to tell people what they were doing. So there's probably been ads on my videos for longer than I know. But I mean, ultimately, I want people to just be able to sit there and watch it and not have to have any interruption, because I mean, I personally hate ads. So I think if I can give other people like the ad-free experience, then I would. So
Okay, well, let's talk about your most successful video. And I poked in my nose today to check your channel to see which one, and it had over 500,000 views. And
yeah.
that's how to show not titled. I'm actually so proud. As much work as you've put into these, you should be. The production quality, chef's kiss on the production quality. That's why I reached out to you first, because good Lord knows someone who puts that level into trying to educate people. I mean, that's fantastic. But so, why do you think that particular video caught on? And is there anything you would add to it now, looking back, if you were to reshoot it?
Yeah, I think so. One, I wasn't surprised that it would do well. I was surprised it did that well. But because How to Show Not Tell is like the #1 writing mantra, right? Like any class you're taking, any critique workshop, they're going to be like, oh, show, don't tell. And that's always it's a very quick, quippy little phrase you can say to kind of encompass a whole range of problems or issues. So I think I was like, okay, this is a topic, everybody's covered it, but I really want to give it my swing, because I know that they want to hear it, because I've gotten requests on it before, and I wasn't excited about the topic at all, because I felt like it's so overdone. But I'd read a lot about it. Obviously, being in the writing community, you can't avoid it. So I think that's why it's so popular. But and I mean, it's a 25-minute video, and so I'm surprised at the number of people who watched it. But I really focused on trying to get as many examples as possible, and I put in a lot of my favorite articles that I'd read. So I think and I think it's also because the YouTube algorithm recommended it to people that didn't normally watch my channel, and that is why it totally blew up. It doubled my subscriber count when that video came out. I was not monetized at the time, so most of the money although that like 500,000 views, most of it I have not gotten a cent from. So it's like a terrible irony, but that's okay. I'm sure I'll make some other blockbuster video at some point, but
Is
yeah.
there anything you would add to it looking back
Oh,
now, or do you
right.
think it's nice and tight?
I think I still feel like it's too long. So, but no, I think the thing I would want to add is more examples of good telling, because I think that's something that people are very confused about. Like, well, because telling's not bad, right? It's a necessary. And because I think everybody has different definitions of what is telling. And I feel like, to me, it's narrative summary. It's making statements about how the characters feel, and that's perfectly good to do sometimes. And it's very subjective of what works and what doesn't. So I think that I would have liked to have more examples of like, well, here's an author using narrative summary, and this is why it works. And I have a few examples in there, but it's more of a focus on here's some quote unquote bad telling that you could make stronger by changing it to this.
Well, it sounds like you might have a video idea in there,
I
telling
know,
instead of showing.
and not, that would be funny, but I bet that would get like 1% of the views that How to Show Not Tell does, just because of the keyword, the clickbaitiness of it, right? So
Yeah. So, do you engage with your commenters on the videos? Why or why not?
I do engage, and sometimes against my better judgment, probably. But I mean, I always try to, because I think from the very beginning, my channel's mantra, my description has been like, the purpose of this channel is to promote discussions about the literary arts. So I realize every time I have a comment and I'm like, oh, I disagree with this person, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the point. That's the reason I have this channel. It's not so that everybody agrees with me and says, oh yay, it's amazing. So that people can be like, oh, well, I think this about it. And I think that's very good, like to have that discussion, to have people disagreeing. And so for me, when I respond to people, it's very much in that spirit of, oh, that's interesting. I want to know more about your perspective, and like, here's what I think, and like, what do you think about that? So it's like really that word, as a literary community, as all the writing folk out there, that we're just discussing books and why they work for us and why they don't, because we're all going to have different opinions. And so I think that's mainly why I engage with my commenters, is because I don't know, I'm not that big of a channel yet, so like I feel like I could respond to anything, and people will ask me direct questions sometimes, like, hey Diane, what about this? And I'm like, okay, like I'm not going to say no to somebody asking me for advice, right? Because
Right.
it's fun to be treated like I'm some sort of authority on it, even though I definitely don't feel like I am. But it helps me think things through too. When people ask me questions, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, I want to. That makes me want to. What are my thoughts on this? And so
Yeah.
it's fun.
Well, that's funny. You should say sometimes you don't feel like you're an authority on something. So you've heard of imposter syndrome. Does does that ever happen to you when you're doing these videos?
I think
And
for sure, yeah.
how do you get past that?
Like I think for me, there's definitely a tough thing in the sort of writing YouTube community where you've got to practice what you preach. So there's some toughness, and like you can talk all you want about this writing theory, but if you don't actually put it into practice in your own writing, then it kind of dilutes that a bit, right? I mean, but there's always, as an editor, you can see flaws in other people's writing. That doesn't make you totally aware of all the flaws in your own writing. So I think that maybe I have imposter syndrome in that degree, but I think it's more, I don't know, it's for me it's more about like humility, right? Like, and with writing and reading, like nobody has all the answers. There's no sort of objective truth about it at all. Like so I think for me it's less about imposter syndrome and more just knowing that there's always more to learn. And but when I do experience things like, oh, I don't feel like I'm good enough, or that this other person is better, I know that's when I kind of need to step back and stop comparing myself to other creators and just think more about like, well, am I doing better than I was before? Like, is this video I just made, am I proud of it? Is it better than my previous videos? Am I trying to improve, and am I staying true to what I made this channel for, like, which is to just, I guess, just for me it's to learn personally for myself, but then also just to give the things that I discover to other people so that they can also write and create. So
So that was your initial inspiration, was to help
well,
others.
yeah, it was sort of that, but I think it was definitely more like I was my own audience, because like my how to motivate yourself to write every day video, like I was definitely not writing every day when I
Mm.
made that, like, and I mean I still don't like write every day. Like, and sometimes I'll go through bouts where I do, right? But it was more like I was trying to teach myself, like, okay, what strategies can I use to make myself write every day? Because I'm, like in the video I mentioned, I was saying like, oh, you can write in the morning because that will make it so you don't procrastinate. And that's me talking to myself because I'm a total night owl. Like I totally write at night and I delay everything until it's 1 in the morning. So I was trying to sort of train myself. So I was really making it for myself, but then other people happened to watch it. So that's what happened.
That's what happens when you put something on YouTube. People accidentally watch it. Did you do any promotional things to get attention, or was this 100% organic?
It was 100% organic, and like I feel like I did everything I wasn't supposed to. Like I have no regular upload schedule. Like I think I've waited months before videos come out, and they just come out like surprise. Like I don't tell anybody. I'm just like, here's a video, and then and so I definitely don't. I'm not adhering to the best practices for YouTube, so I don't recommend anybody emulating me in that respect. Because I'm sure regular content is a good idea. And
Well, I would agree, but I'd also say that you, by doing it at your own pace, and making sure the quality level feels like something that was produced in a big budget kind of way, with a, I think that gives you as much traction as the trying to trick the algorithm into showing your stuff to people. Um, when I first met you, I think you were going to the library and using the equipment at the library. Are you still doing that because of COVID, or how do you handling the equipment part of it, the microphone stuff like that?
yeah, because I was trying to get a more soundproof situation since I didn't really have anywhere good at my previous apartment. But now I live in a house rental, so we have a bunch of extra closets. So I have a designated closet upstairs that's for that. And last year I got a Blue Yeti microphone, which is like the stereotypical YouTube
Yeah.
microphone. And so that's what I've kind of used and I mean, most of my videos were films in my apartment on my early ones were just recorded with like literally this Apple mic. So, and then I got a better mic, although arguably, I don't know, I'm still very bad at audio, so I don't entirely know what I'm doing. But
So let me get this straight. When I'm listening to you, talk for 20 minutes on a fantastic subject. You're hiding in a dark closet when you're
Yeah.
doing that?
Oh, there's like an overhead light. There's a vent in there too, so I don't like asphyxiate or whatever. But
The
like,
YouTube star dies
mhm,
just recording
yeah,
video.
yeah, I have to make sure I go out and breathe some fresher air from occasion because I do get slightly lightheaded if I stay in there too long. So
See the that's I just have this image of you going in, taking the dresses, pushing them
just
to the
like,
side, nestling in. See the things I learned in
I know
doing
it's
these interviews.
I know it's if you're expecting me to have some like super fancy rig and then it's just like a closet. Yeah, that's pretty much that's it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about how you get the genesis for ideas and how you do the research part. Okay, now you have to shoehorn all this together, stitch it together. What is the actual video making process like?
So after I have my script, which usually goes through several critique partners, so I'm because I'm very perfectionistic about it, and then I take that script and I have Keynote, which is basically the Mac Apple version of PowerPoint, except it's better because it looks slightly has slightly better transitions and animations and whatnot. So I take that, and then if you've ever used PowerPoint and they have presenter notes underneath it that you can put there. So I build out the slides, and like for each video, it's like 100, 200, 300 slides. So I have all those blank slides, and then I put in every sentence into its own slide. So nowadays, I think in the past I might have done a few more sentences per slide, but now I do more visuals, I think. So I'm like, okay, here's one sentence. Now I got to find a visual to represent that. And then these days I lean more heavily on video clips than I do still images. But I also try to, I get all the book covers in there. Like, okay, I'm mentioning this book, I'll do this. Oh, I mentioned this article. I can put a screenshot of that article because I really like putting book covers whenever I can. And I'll put any kind of textual examples I have. I like to have those on the screen so you're hearing it and you're reading it at the same time. Because I think especially with fiction, I really like people to see how it's formatted. Like, here's how the dialogue works. Here's where they put a paragraph break. So I try to do that as much as possible. But yeah, so building out the visuals, it's like hundreds of clips and photos. And then I do a dry run recording where I'm just recording the presentation because I add in like little transitions and animations or whatever. And then I export that video into iMovie. And then I do my real audio recording where I'm recording like every sentence or every couple of sentences I'm trying to do it, and it takes me a long time sometimes if I get too nitpicky with it. If I'm like, oh, I hated how I said that, it's stupid. Like if you hate the sound of your own voice, just imagine doing that for like 8 hours straight, and then you'll really hate it. Yeah,
I would really hate it. Yeah.
but that's what it is. And then I have to adjust the audio, listen to it a lot, and then I have background music, and then my husband always listens to it before I publish it, so that I'm like, okay, here, listen to it, tell me if there's audio problems or video problems, and like that way I don't do anything stupid. I have occasionally done some stupid things, but that's okay.
Does he know to stay away from the closet when you're in there?
He does. Yeah, he does. No, he likes to be extra noisy just to annoy me sometimes, so that's fine too.
Well, I've met him, and as we've had that conversation, he is evil. So that's inside joke.
Yeah.
Inside joke. Okay, you said music. Now we talked about the fact that copyright stuff can happen on music. How do you play music on a YouTube channel without getting copyright issues?
Yeah, because there's certain music that, just like with the pictures and the videos, that are free for commercial use. So even if I'm monetizing, I'm allowed to use it. Some of them will want an attribution. A lot of the musicians will be like, you need to add me in your description, just credit me as the song, but you can use it for free. And so I use specifically Vinswept. I actually don't know how to pronounce that. But he's based somewhere, I think, in Scandinavia. But he makes just like this cool kind of synthesized fantasy music. So that's my intro, is his song, Clockwork. And then I use all of his songs too. Like I bought his whole, like he has like just a huge zip file of all the songs he's ever made. And so I use his stuff in the background. It's all very like fluty and like harps and stuff like that. And I mean, I also listen to his music when I'm writing sometimes, just to have like some fantasy music in the background. But yeah, so he's very generous in allowing people just to use his YouTube.
assume we're going to put a link in the show description below.
We will. Yeah, I know. And I really wanted to like reach out to him and thank him because I don't think he knows. Like, I don't think I've ever, like, I've never reached out to him and been like, hey, thanks for your music because I'm using it in all of my videos. So,
Well, shout out to the guy whose name we can't even pronounce right now. Let's send him the link to this video. All right. What kind of, okay. So let's get towards the end here. And usually this is something I would hear most of them say at the end. What advice would you give for people who are starting up their own YouTube channel?
I think it's important to really pursue what you're genuinely passionate about and not what you just think is going to get you views, because
Well, why are we doing these interviews then? All I want is views out of you. What the heck? Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Back to you.
Because I feel like sometimes people, they'll lean into really controversial stuff just to get views. And I think it's a good way to continue a conversation, but I think that you genuinely have to care about a topic in order to cover it. And I think sometimes also from a more cold-blooded marketing perspective, people like things, they do like stuff that they already know. So that's why I feel like my Harry Potter video did very successfully. And if I were to make like a Hunger Games video, I know that would do well. I've wanted to, but then I have to like reread the series because I'm just that, like, I'm not gonna do a video on it unless I've like really studied it. So that's the tough thing for me. But I know that those topics, they do well because people like what they already know. So if you're, analyzing Avatar or Game of Thrones, that's going to do really well. So I think if you kind of have that as like a base, like, okay, even if it's not like movies and books, but it's some other topic, and you're like, okay, well, here's some popular topics, I'll cover those. And then I also have my pretty unique topics that I want to cover personally. So I think having that blend of stuff that's already popular or has an audience already, as far as just if it's one of those popular franchises, or and then going into the nitty gritty of other topics that you personally want to cover, that you're like, maybe people, they might also be interested in this because they like how I analyzed that. So
okay, well, great. Okay, well, I think we've pretty well wrapped it up. Hopefully there'll be some comments you can respond to in the below.
Yeah, so
I always forget to look. So this has been Diane Callahan of the Quotidian Writer. You can find her YouTube channel linked below, and we'll send you to. Should we send them to the best video you have, or the one with the least views, so that the 3 people who watch this video will get you 3 more views on yours?
I know. I'm trying to think. Well, see, now they're just gonna go straight to how to show not tell, but
well, it is freaking fantastic. So
glad you liked it.
all right. Well, goodbye, and we'll see you on the next video.